Fact check. Trump lawyer closes impeachment defense with a barrage of dishonesty. Written by Daniel Dale and Tara Subramanian. Wow. That's a heck of a name. All right. Published February 13th, which is yesterday, 2021. By the way, today is February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day. Hope you are enjoying it with somebody that you love or you care for. If not, remember to love yourself. With that being said, let's get into this article here. Former President Donald Trump's impeachment defense was dishonest from start to finish. Prior to Trump's Senate acquittal on Saturday on a charge that he incited the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol, Trump lawyer Michael Vanderveen delivered a closing argument that was replete with false and misleading statements. This followed a Friday session in which Vanderveen delivered other false and misleading statements, which followed a Monday written filing in which Vanderveen and his colleagues delivered still more false and misleading claims. Here's a fact check of some of the things Vanderveen said on Saturday, plus a fact check of the false claim made by a Democratic impeachment manager during Saturday's closing arguments. Again, let's get ready for this.
You're about to experience a nigga moment.
Let's get ready for this. Remember, guys, let's get ready for this.
You're about to experience a nigga moment.
Bruh.
You about to experience it, okay? Who perpetrated the insurrection? Vanderveen claimed that the insurrection at the Capitol was pre-planned and premeditated by the fringe left and right groups.
That's bullshit. Stop lying.
Far right groups, not far not far left. All right. Facts first. This is false. There is no evidence that left-wing groups were involved in planning or participating in the insurrection. Members of the right-wing groups, conversely, have been charged with both planning and participating. Though Trump's legal team has repeatedly attempted to muddy the waters, the evidence shows that it was Trump supporters who were overwhelmingly responsible for the attack. Numerous participants are alleged in court documents to have told the FBI their actions were motivated by their support of for Donald Trump, and some have even said that they felt that they had been directly instructed by Trump to take action, while some alleged participants have idiosyncratic political histories and hard to pinpoint ideologies. There is no basis for the suggestion that organized left-wing entities were involved in the insurrection. It is also important to note that some of the criminal behavior that day was allegedly planned in advance, but some was not. Only a handful of the 200 plus criminal cases filed to date indicate that rioters had showed up that day with the intention of breaching breaching the Capitol. So again, that's very important to distinguish, because if they didn't have an intention to do it, and that means that something pushed them towards that. And what the author here is trying to get at, the idea is that it was Trump's words that pushed it. So you get why they're saying this, right? Trump and incitement. Vanderveen said that the House impeachment managers had not shown a single example of Mr. Trump urging anyone to engage in violence of any kind. He then added that at no point did you hear anything that could even be ever possibly be construed as Mr. Trump encouraging or sanctioning an insurrection. Sanders, you did not hear those tapes because they do not exist. Facts first. It is obviously not true that Trump has not made any comments that could even possibly be construed as encouraging or sanctioning an insurrection. Multiple alleged insurrectionists or their lawyers have claimed to the FBI or in court that Trump's words inspired them to action that day. So again, if you have people who genuinely believe that, and you have no evidence to the contrary, unless you're a mind reader, you have multiple people claiming that. It's not just one, a bunch of them, right? Not just one. And I don't think I want to post this because again, I want people to question things. So I mean, I want people to know what's going on, right? I want people to know what's going on, because this is very, very important. This is very, very crazy. I want people to see how crazy things have gotten, how out of control things have gotten. Like, again, I want you to take a pause for a moment and realize what we're talking about here. We're not talking about just some random insurrection. We're not talking about just some soccer hooligans who just showed up. Oh my gosh! Oh, silly Billy and his friends. They just showed up to the U.S. Capitol and come and tear it down. No. We're talking about an actual attempt to take over our government. That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about just some weekend at fucking space camp. Okay. That's, again, some people have tried to downplay it, They have tried their best to say, oh, it was Antifa. It was, I tell you what.
I'll tell you what.
It was Antifa. All right. It wasn't Patriots, all right? Right? It wasn't Patriots, all right? It wasn't Patriots. It was Antifa. I tell you what.
I'll tell you what.
It was them Antifers. And the FBI has already said that's not true, right? It's possible that some of the people who are facing charges are simply trying to shift blame to Trump after the fact, but it is abundantly clear Trump's words were understood by some listeners as a presidential endorsement of an uprising. Trump's words prior to January 6th, again, prior to January 6th. Van der Veen said Mr. Trump did not spend the weeks prior to January 6th inciting violence. He spent those weeks pursuing his election challenge through the court system and other legal procedures, exactly as the Constitution and Congress prescribed. Facts first. This is a highly incomplete account, I should say, of Trump's behavior after the election. Rather than simply file lawsuits and await court's decisions, Trump mounted a relentless public campaign to convince his supporters of the lie that they had been cheated out of the victory. He also urged supporters to come to Washington for a January 6th protest he promised would be wild. He did say that, but that did happen. Biden-Harris and condemnations of violence. Van der Veen echoed false attacks Trump himself had made in the past, claiming President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris repeatedly refused to condemn attacks and acts of violence during riots last year. Facts first, this is false. Both Biden and Harris condemned riots and violence last year on multiple occasions. However, they did express support for peaceful protests. In August, Biden says, I want to be very clear about all of this. Rioting is not protesting. Looting is not protesting. Setting fires is not protesting. None of this is protesting. It's lawlessness, plain and simple. And those who do it should be prosecuted. Violence will not bring change. It will only bring destruction. It's wrong in every way. Harris distinguished between peaceful and violent protests in her own August statement, saying, we must always defend peaceful protests and peaceful demonstrators. We should not confuse them with those looting and committing acts of violence. She added, we will not let those vigilantes and extremists derail the path to justice. In October, Biden and Harris issued a joint statement following the fatal police shooting of Walter Wallace Jr., a black man in Philadelphia who was carrying a knife during what his family said was a mental health crisis. Biden and Harris said that no amount of anger at the very real injustices in our society, I should say, excuses violence, and that looting is not a protest, it is a crime. The timing of the trial. Van der Veen claimed that it was Democrats' fault that there were constitutional questions about holding an impeachment trial for a president who is no longer in office. He said, they said on the article, it could have tried the president while he was still in office if they really believed he was an imminent threat. They didn't. Facts first. It is inaccurate for Van der Veen to pin sole blame on the Democrats for the Senate's decision to hold the trial after Trump left office. Democrats did propose to try Trump while he was still in office. It was the Republican Senator Mitch McConnell and then the majority leader in the Senate who rejected the idea, rebuffing Democrats' suggestion of bringing the Senate back on an emergency basis for a trial before Biden's inauguration. McConnell said on January 13th, the day the House voted to impeach Trump, that there was no chance a fair or serious Senate trial could be completed before the inauguration. Trump's past comments about violence. One of the Democratic House impeachment managers, Representative Madeline Dean of Pennsylvania, spoke during closing arguments about Trump's rhetoric before the insurrection. Donald Trump knew the people he was inciting. Leading up to the January the 6th, he saw the violence they were capable of. He had a pattern and practice of praising and encouraging supporters of violence, never condemning it, Dean said. Facts first. It's true that Trump had a pattern of encouraging or applauding supporters of violence. We listed 9 examples in a fact check Friday, but it's not true that Trump never condemned violence or support for violence. Trump has issued repeated condemnations. Again, they're being fair. They are saying that Trump has condemned violence. Trump was vocal last year in his denunciation of violence connected to racial justice protests and violence allegedly associated with the Antifa movement. In both cases, he was transparent in his efforts to use these incidents as a cudgel against his Democratic opponents. But he has also condemned violence of other kinds on multiple other occasions. These include an anti-Semitic massacre at a Pittsburgh synagogue in 2018, the mailing of bombs in 2018 to Trump's political opponents, and CNN mass shootings in Texas and Ohio in 2019, and an anti-Semitic stabbing attack in New York in 2019. No nation can succeed that tolerates violence or the threat of violence as a method of political intimidation, coercion, or control. We all know that. Such conduct must be fiercely opposed and firmly prosecuted, he said in one October 2018 speech in which he discussed the mail bombs. So CNN was fair. You can't say that they were unfair. They did mention, right, where Donald Trump has condemned violence, but they're also suggesting that two things can be true at once. Two things can be true at once, that he has actually condemned violence in the past, but also encouraged it. Two things can be true at once.